Episode 2 of Talking Shit Beyond the Comfort Zone with KING-KAMBUF, unveiling the shadows, the silent war on speech. A speech and thought. The topic is the practice of shadow banning and media suppression. On social media, the tactics used, the decisions made on who and how to implement, who's involved and why. In an environment where free speech is the law of the land, censorship and suppression on social thought is so high. Let's talk about the platforms that engage in it, from the social platforms to the operational platforms like web servers to banks. Let's correlate this practice to data monitoring, who's listening to who, pulling strings. Let's talk about monitoring practices from social media to cell phones, skimming to financial manipulations, broadly with rates and inflation to local with financial market volatilities. Our goal is to provide an episode outlining that divides deep into this decision, leaving no stone unturned as it relates to media monitoring, the green light and red lighting the content, voices and thoughts of it, and their users to push narratives that helps or hurt our communities, locally within the United States and globally around the world, to disrupt public and government discourse. Lastly, let's talk about these practices are strategic in nature to underline espionage practices of war efforts and the importance of acknowledging these practices, how to fight back the ways of creating our own public social media platform that allows our true voices to be heard and disseminated without such shadow banning practices. Unveiling the shadows, the silent war on speech and thought. This is episode 2 of Talking Shit Beyond the Comfort Zone with KING-KAMBUF. Topics compare and contrast social media practices between countries like China and heavily censored yet healthily promote topics to teach and educate its users versus countries like the United States that perpetuate senseless fees that arguably dumbs down a nation. Let's call on the SpongeBob SquarePants effect versus how other countries do it. Not sophisticated social media mediation practices, violences and hate, racism and anti-government rhetoric and propaganda, and it uses the allowed, encouraged, and flood into the Episode 2 of Talking Shit Beyond the Comfort Zone with KING-KAMBUF. Unveiling the shadows, the silent war on speech and thought. Topics compare and contrast social media practices beyond countries like China that heavily censor yet healthily promote topics that teach and educate its users versus countries like the United States that perpetuate senseless fees that arguably dumb us down a nation. Let's call on the SpongeBob SquarePants effect versus how other countries that do not have sophisticated social media mediation practices, violence and hate, racism and anti-government rhetoric and propaganda are used to allow, encourage and flood into the social followers. Go ahead, search the web for the articles that highlight these comparisons and verses, finds examples highlighting events like it's similar to the Arab Spring. Compare this, that content brings, created and disseminated, pushed and flooded through our social media timelines that create social corners like Black Twitter and Black Facebook. How all these platforms were pushed into digital bubbles that create universes where we're not able to interact or like or friend our people that may reside in these invisible bubbles used on social media for spiels that limit public discourse, networking and community betterment, yet are instead forced topic bombardments From acts of foolery to digital prostitution and sex content.
With KING-KAMBUF.
Following the overall theme of this episode that dive deeper into the topics and narratives just highlighted. Let's discuss platforms like Black Twitter and Black Facebook and how these platforms were pushed into digital bubbles that create universes where we're not able to interact like friends of each other, and force social media force fields that limit public discourse, networking, and community betterment, and how it's up to us as a people to elevate our discourse, to leave behind the buffoonery that creates to the SpongeBob SquarePants effect that perpetuates senseless feats that arguably dumb us down as a nation and people to instead force the topics. Episode 2 of Talking Shit Beyond the Comfort Zone with KING-KAMBUF. Unveiling the shadows, the silent war on speech and thought. Let's discuss platforms like Black Twitter and Black Facebook, on how these platforms were pushed into digital bubbles that create universes where we're not able to interact like our friend each other, and people that may reside on these invisible bubbles using social media force fields that limit public discourse, networking, and community betterment, and how it's up to us as a people to elevate our discourse, to leave behind the buffoonery that creates to the SpongeBob SquarePants effect that perpetuates senseless feeds that arguably dumb down a nation and a people to instead force topics, bombardments from acts of buffoonery to digital prostitution and sex content. This episode that dives deeper into the topics and narratives just highlighted. We stress the importance of the content we create and propagate on these platforms, and even more so the importance of supporting and creating our own platforms to celebrate the genius of us as a people that make up the Black diaspora and the nation of KAMBUF. So we are no subjected to the pigeonholing of these social media platforms placed on us. Again, we reiterate the importance of, once we do establish these platforms, we don't double down and create more shameless platforms like the World Store that further place us in a box of foolery and buffoonery. Episode 2 of Talking Shit Beyond the Comfort Zone with KING-KAMBUF. Unveiling the shadows, the silent war in speech and thought. The topic is the practice of shadows of panic and media suppression on the social media. The tactics used, the decisions made, and who and how to implement them on you. Who's involved and why in an environment where free speech is the law of the land. Censorship and suppression of our social thoughts is so hard, it's so hard. Let's talk about the platforms that engage in it, from the social platforms to the operational platforms like web savers, and banks. Let's